Hey guys, Mateo Flows here, coming at you from bpeakxp.com, your number one source for transformation, bringing you our inaugural debut of Judge Your Guru. This is the show that brings you the need to know on leaders and teachers from the worlds of wellness, transformation, and spirituality. So for our first ever edition of Judge Your Guru, picked a very special candidate, the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Joe Dispenza. If you don't know who Dr. Joe Dispenza is, he's a prolific teacher that's been traveling the world for years. He's written many books, and we're gonna dive right into what his bio says on his website to get a little deeper insight into who is this man and what are his teachings. Search Joe Dispenza on YouTube. The top video that comes up is an interview from the Impact Theory podcast, edited by the channel Fearless Soul. We're going to be checking that out and using that as a way to kind of dissect what makes Joe Dispenza unique as a teacher. So shout out to the channel Fearless Soul for this awesome edit.
Well, a habit is
let's get right into the mix.
Of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. A habit is when you've done something so many times that your body now knows how to do it better than your mind. So if you think about it, people wake up in the morning, they begin to think about their problems. Those problems are circuits of memories in the brain. Each one of those memories are connected to people and things at certain times and places. And if the brain is a record of the past, the moment they start their day, they're already thinking in the past.
Okay, so right from the jump, you can start to see what makes Joe Dispenza's lens unique. He's speaking to us in terms of neurology and from a scientific lens. When I first heard about Joe Dispenza, it was from his book, You Are the Placebo. And it was a pretty mind-blowing revelation to recognize how powerful the placebo effect is. It's something we've all heard of, but until his book, it was never clearly highlighted on a mass scale how integral the placebo effect is to the scientific method. You don't realize that every single scientific experiment ever run has to account for this truth that our perception of reality shapes the effect our body has. That's why they do double-blind placebo tests. And a lot of his work starts to build upon this basis. Once you've accepted that you could take a sugar pill and have it have the same biological reaction as an aspirin, it really makes you reconsider how your perception is affecting your relationship to the world around you.
Each one of those memories has an emotion. Emotions are the end product of past experiences. So the moment they recall those memories of their problems, they all of a sudden feel unhappy, they feel sad, they feel pain. Now, how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So the person's entire state of being when they start their day is in the past. So what does that mean? The familiar past will sooner or later be predictable future. So if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, and you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, by very definition of emotions, you're thinking in the past. And for the most part, you're going to keep creating the same life. So then people grab their cell phone, they check their WhatsApp, they check their text, they check their email.
What I really like about Joe Dispenza is that he ties in the physical with the mental and emotional. In a lot of spiritual communities and offerings, there is this disconnect from the embodied aspect of what our experience is. Not only does our physicality and the dopamine, serotonin firing in our brain create our neurological state, but the story that we're telling ourselves has a reciprocal feedback loop on that physiological state. So the two are one and the same. And where a lot of the power of Dr. Joe's work comes in is in learning how to work in that feedback loop and rewire it in a way that serves you. So he's going to go a little deeper into that now. My invitation for you is to really drop into what he's saying here.
Emails, they check Facebook, they take a picture of their feet, they post it on Facebook, they tweet
Taking
something,
pictures of their
they do
feet.
Instagram.
That was a nice little jab he threw in there under the radar.
And then they go through a series of routine behaviors. They get out of bed on the same side, they go to the toilet, they get a cup of coffee, they take a shower, they get dressed, they drive to work the same way, they do the same things, they see the same people, they push the same emotional buttons, and that becomes the routine, and it becomes like a program. So now they've lost their free will to a program, and there's no unseen hand doing it to them. So when it comes time to change, the redundancy of that cycle becomes a subconscious program. So now 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years
Beautiful
old
edit, Fearless
is
Soul.
a
Well done.
memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious habits, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function like a computer program.
There's this word called hedonic adaptation, and it's the tendency of the human mind to start to screen and filter to eliminate what has already been mapped and known. So your brain actually ceases to get stimulated to the same degree when you're in an environment that is too routine. And that leads to a sense of lethargy, a lack of novelty and excitement. This is one of the reasons why people travel. And this is one of the reasons why so many people who go to Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreats leave transformed and changed.
So then a person can say with their 5% of their conscious mind, I want to be healthy, I want to be happy, I want to be free. But the body's on a whole different program. So then how do you begin to make those changes? Well, you have to get beyond the analytical mind, because what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And that's where meditation comes in, because you can teach people through practice how to change their brainwaves, slow them down. And when they do that properly, they do enter the operating system where they can begin to make some really important changes. So most people then wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis. They wait for loss, some tragedy to make up their mind to change. And my message is, why wait? And you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration.
Okay, so it's time to get a little judgy and a little critical of the awesome message that Joe Dispenza is putting forward, because that's what we're doing in this segment. So where I see Joe Dispenza starting to blur the lines is in his use of science to validate what he knows to be experientially true. Now, he has a very solid scientific foundation, but I've heard other people critiquing the way that he uses that foundation to kind of justify a lot of the points that he's putting forward. Another big issue, and I follow a few Joe Dispenza Facebook groups, is you'll see people on there who've been doing his practice for a long time, and they're trying to exhibit a result, whether it's a healing. A lot of times these are people who are dealing with like cancers or very serious issues of their body, and they're practicing this changing of their mindset, but they're not seeing the result, and that can lead to extreme frustration. It's like, why isn't it working? I'm doing the things you're telling me, Joe. So there is an element there that I think is unacknowledged. And I think there's a reasoning for that unacknowledgement. And that is, if you don't believe it will happen, then it won't. But just because you believe it will happen is not a guarantee that it will. And I don't know if it serves his message to highlight that, but I think it's an important thing for people to recognize so they don't get so caught up in this idea that they're doing something wrong when they're trying to manifest their future ideal state and it's not working. Instead of solely focusing on this practice, I think that's a good time to evaluate what other perspectives can you start to bring into the mix to see where might I be missing something. And honestly, that is the number one biggest critique that we'll have. We'll nitpick a few different things just for fun, but I just wanted to point that out. Let's drop into this again.
I think right now, the cool thing is that people are waking up.
Hallelujah, brother.
Really interesting, and where I found the deepest hooks into how powerful this can be for somebody is when you talk about trauma, and you've talked about how people experience a traumatic event, but they then basically rehearse it, and how that then has this knock-on effect. So what is that? Why do people find it so hard to get past trauma?
The stronger the emotional reaction you have to some experience in your life, the higher the emotional quotient, the more you pay attention to the cause. And the moment the brain puts all of its attention on the cause, it takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. So long-term memories are created from very highly emotional experiences. So what happens then is that people think neurologically within the circuitry of that experience, and they feel chemically within the boundaries of those emotions. And so when you have an emotional reaction to someone or something, most people think that they can't control their emotional reaction. Well, it turns out if you allow that emotional reaction, it's called a refractory period, to last for hours or days, that's called a mood. I say to someone, hey, well, what's up? You say, I'm in a mood. Well, why are you in a mood? Well, I had this thing happen to me 5 days ago, and I'm having one long emotional reaction. If you keep that same emotional reaction going on for weeks or months, that's called temperament. Why is he so bitter? I don't know, let's ask him. Why is he so bitter? Why are you bitter? Well, I had this thing happen to me 9 months ago. And if you keep that same emotional reaction going on for years on end, that's called a personality trait. And so learning how to shorten your refractory period of emotional reactions is really where the work starts.
And what I love about this is he's not saying anything so revolutionary and new. I mean, spiritual leaders and gurus and teachers have been preaching about this pause between reaction for forever. But he's using these scientific terms to make it extremely accessible. And in many ways, Joe Dispenza is like a Trojan horse of spirituality and mysticism. He presents it in a way that it's material on a certain level. No, I shouldn't say that, because he's actually not of the Newtonian perspective, and we'll be getting into that a little deeper, but it is scientifically validated, right? Or at least that's the way it's kind of trying to be presented. Now, where things get really interesting, I have a lot of friends who have gone to his retreats in person. It goes deep. This man is using ancient breathwork techniques to facilitate DMT release so that people can have these ecstatic moments of realization that act as the refractory periods he's talking about, so that they can then begin to rewire these patterns. Don't get fooled by the way he might present himself. This man is a wizard.
So then people, when they have an event, what they do is they keep recalling the event, because the emotions of stress hormones, the survival emotions, are saying, pay attention to what happened, because you want to be prepared if it happens again. Turns out most people spend 70% of their life living in survival and living in stress. So they're always...
And that's one of those things there. It's like, where'd you get that stat, Joe? How do you know that people spend 70% of their life living in survival and stress? There are some areas where I feel like he might be kind of fudging the lines, but you got to respect it, because he's trying to bring forward a message that's true in a way that penetrates and resonates. So, I'm just pointing it out.
Is anticipating the worst case scenario.
People definitely
based
do
on
that.
Their past experience, and they're literally, out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field, they're selecting the worst possible outcome, and they're beginning to emotionally embrace it with fear, and they're conditioning their body into a state of fear. Do that enough times, body has a panic attack without you. You can't even predict it, because it's programmed subconsciously. So then you say to the person, why are you this way? And they'll say, I am this way because of this event that happened to me 15 or 20 years ago. And what that means from a biological standpoint is that they haven't been able to change since that event. So then the emotions from the experience tend to give the body and the brain a rush of energy. So people become addicted to the rush of those emotions, and they use the problems and conditions in their life to reaffirm their limitation, so at least they can feel something. So now when it comes time to change, you say to the person, why are you this way? Well, every time they recall the event, they're producing the same chemistry in their brain and body as if the event is occurring. Firing and wiring the same circuits and sending the same emotional signature to the body. Well, what's the relevance behind that? Well, your body is the unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between the experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. So
one of my biggest critiques with the manifestation spiritual wellness community is that they don't emphasize sacrifice, right? A lot of times, if you want something, there's something you're gonna have to give up in order to get there. If you wanna walk across the street, you gotta get up and move your feet. Yes, you will make progress if you visualize yourself lifting weights. It will help but it'll never give you the same exact stimulus as actually lifting those weights, right? There's something that your body knows when it's holding something heavy in the relationship that gravity creates and that stimulus that it sends. That I don't care how good you are at envisioning and imagining, you're not going to be able to create that same nervous system response. At a certain point in time, visualization is just an assistance on top. You have to take the action if you want your body to believe your visualizations. Your body knows when you're bullshitting it. And as well practiced as we might be, I want people out there to know that there's more to it than simply sitting and wishing and imagining and feeling, although that is like one of the most important first steps. You can heal yourself. There are miracles. But also, you gotta lift those weights every once in a while.
So most people then, they're constantly reaffirming their emotional states. So when it comes time to give up that emotion, they can say, I really want to do it. But really the body is stronger than the mind because it's been conditioned that way. So the servant now has become the master. And the person all of a sudden, once they step into that unknown, they'd rather feel guilt and suffering because at least they can predict it. Being in the unknown is a scary place for most people because the unknown is uncertain. And when people say to me, well, I can't predict my future. I'm in the unknown, and I always say the best way to predict your future is to create it. Not from the known, but from the unknown. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate in one day? The act of rehearsing them mentally, closing your eyes, and rehearsing the action.
Rehearsing the reaction of what you want, or the action?
The action of what you want. By closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing some action. If you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between what you're imaging and what you're experiencing in 3D world. So then you begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like the event has already occurred. Now, your brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, priming it that way, the hardware becomes a software program. And who knows, you just may start acting like a happy person. And then I think the hardest part is to teach our body emotionally what the future will feel like ahead of the actual experience. So what does that mean? You can't wait for your success to feel empowered. You can't wait for your wealth to feel abundant. You can't wait for your new relationship to feel love, or your healing to feel whole. I mean, that's the old model of reality of cause and effect, waiting for something outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. And when we feel better inside of us, we pay attention to whatever caused it. But what that means then is that from the Newtonian world is that most people spend their whole life living in lack, waiting for something to change out there.
What do you mean the Newtonian world?
The Newtonian world is all about the predictable. It's all about predicting the future. But the quantum model of reality is about causing an effect. The moment you start feeling abundant and worthy, you are generating wealth. The moment you're empowered and feel it, you're beginning to step towards your success.
We're starting to get into the nitty-gritty of what defines Joe Dispenza. He emphasizes the placebo effect in the way that our thoughts affect our body, and he comes at it from a non-Newtonian perspective. Anytime you hear anybody in this space speaking in quantum terms, you should be a little skeptical, because the reality is no one really knows the full truth of quantum physics. There's a lot of mystery within that, and whenever there's mystery, there's opportunity for exploitation and explanation. So you can play with that mystery to kind of explain away what you're trying to say. I do believe it. I do think that there is a way to draw forward the reality that you want to bring in. But that doesn't mean that there's not Newtonian cause and effect. That doesn't mean that you don't got to pick up the weights. That's going to be my mantra. I'm going to go to a Joe Dispenza retreat wearing "you still got to pick up the weights" on a shirt. And real quick, guys, let's just check out a little bit about Joe Dispenza and his website and what he's offering, because this man is a successful teacher. This is not just any guru that we're judging today. This is somebody who's been wildly successful at spreading his message and making that money along the way. And if we go to his shop, what you'll start to see is, man, this guy He's got everything. You want a Joe Dispenza notebook, you want a Joe Dispenza jacket, you want a Joe Dispenza eye mask, we got that in foreign languages, meditations, books and courses. Let's check out some of his stuff. I've heard good things about Joe Dispenza's courses. You'll see some of them priced here, $225, $290. It's not so overpriced, right? I think some of this stuff, you can get $13 here, is reasonable, as long as it works, right? And what I've always tried to do when I'm offering keys and trying to sell something is make not the wisdom what I'm selling, but the audiovisual production and experience and the value of creating a journey out of the work, what you're actually paying for. So I do feel a little iffy about just audio recordings being sold for $250. And to be honest, if I was to recommend this, I would say just go look at his YouTube stuff for free. There's so much amazing Joe Dispenza work out there. I don't know if you need to go and buy his course to get the benefits. His retreats, I've heard amazing things about, and it's one of the reasons I'm reviewing him first, because I know people firsthand who have gone to his retreats and come back with their mind blown at how amazing and transformative of an experience it is. And according to all firsthand accounts of people who I trust who have met him, the man is a real deal living master. So cut to the end credits, that's the judgment, but I want to explore a little bit more. If we check out his events, we got progressive retreats, special retreats, advanced follow-up retreats. So his week-long, let's check out and see what those are looking like. Week-long retreats in, let's go Cancun. I want to go see Dr. Joe Dispenza in Cancun. $2,000 for a week-long retreat. That is in no way cost prohibitive. And you'll see here that the event is sold out. So the man is doing it right. Yeah, well done. Round of applause to Mr. Joe Dispenza. Let's go ahead and finish off the rest of this clip.
The moment you start feeling whole, your healing begins. And when you love yourself and you love all of life, you'll create an equal. Now you're causing an effect. And I think that's the difference between living as a victim in your world, saying, I am this way because of this person or that thing or this experience. They made me think and feel this way. When you switch that around, you become a creator of your world, and you start saying, my thinking and my feeling is changing an outcome in my life, and now that's a whole different game, and we start believing more that we're creators of reality.
So how do we go from, okay, I have this negative emotion, it's controlling my life, it's got me in this cycle of, I think about this emotion, which triggers a chemical reaction, which trains my body to feel that way, which makes it easier, more likely I will do it again. And so now I'm in this vicious cycle.
And unconscious, and it's unconscious.
Right. And you said, does your thinking create your environment, or does your environment create your thinking? Which I thought was really, really interesting. So how do we then go from that?
Tell me, Joe. I want to know.
To begin,
give us the keys.
Process of something that's empowering. It's me in a different state. It's my future self. Is it meditation? Is it, what does that look like?
If you're not being defined by a vision of the future, then you're left with the old memories of the past, and you will be predictable in your life. And if you wake up in the morning and you're not being defined by a vision of the future, as you see the same people and you go to the same places and you do the exact same thing at the exact same time, it's no longer that your personality is creating your personal reality. Now your personal reality is affecting or creating your personality. Your environment is really controlling how you think and feel unconsciously, because every person, everything, every place, every experience has a neurological network in your brain. Every experience that you have with every person produces an emotion. So some people will use their boss to reaffirm their addiction to judgment. They'll use their enemy to reaffirm their addiction to hatred. They'll use their friends to reaffirm their addiction to suffering. So now they need the outer world to feel something. So to change then is to be greater than your environment, to be greater than the conditions in your world. And the environment is that seductive.
Snaps on that one, Joe.
Why is meditation the tool? Well, let's sit down, let's close our eyes. Let's disconnect from your outer environment. So if you're seeing less things, there's less stimulation going to your brain. If you're playing soft music or you have earplugs in, less sensory information coming to your brain, so you're disconnecting from your environment. If you can sit your body down and tell it to stay like an animal, stay right here. I'm going to feed you when we're done. You can get up and check your emails, you can do all your texts, but right now, you're going to sit there and obey me. So then, when you do that properly, and you're not eating anything, or smelling anything, or tasting anything, you're not up experiencing and feeling anything, you would have to agree with me that you're being defined by a thought, right? So when the body wants to go back to its emotional past, and you become aware that your attention is on that emotion, and where you place your attention is where you place your energy, you're siphoning your energy out of the present moment into the past. And you become aware of that. And you settle your body back down in the present moment, because it's saying, well, it's 8 o'clock, you know.
Powerful. So, in conclusion, my friends, all the data I see suggests Dr. Joe Dispenza is the real deal, a living master of the tools that he's teaching, and an amazing Trojan horse for these more mystical elements of healing and transformation into the mainstream, somewhat skeptical scientific community. We thank you, Joe Dispenza, for being the real deal. If I was to recommend for you to look into his courses, I would definitely prioritize all the free stuff he has online before paying what might be an expensive amount for one of his courses. I would recommend, if you really need a powerful shift, go to one of his retreats, because I think you'll get much more in person with the novelty and shift and the getting into a new environment and being around people who also support you than you will just doing one of his courses online. I will say he's a little shifty with some of his scientific backing, but you know, who am I to judge? It's your friend Mateo Flows, coming at you from bpeakxp.com, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Love ya. If you guys enjoyed this experience, got something out of it, hit that subscribe button to continue and support the creation and spread of transformation. Let's change the world together.